Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of Let's Talk Tactics. I'm your host, Zach Burrell.
Hey, I'm Danylboone.
And I'm Locke.
And this week we will be talking about team building and initial positioning and everything that goes along with that, our thoughts of how each of us approaches that when we play live PvP. But first we wanted to mention, kind of get everybody kind of thinking about it now, because it's coming in the future, near future, is class matches. So I think I can speak for all of us in saying we're pretty excited for this content. It's the first ranked system of live PvP that we've had in global, and I believe in JP it dropped around Glaciella time. Is that what you guys are aware of as well?
Yeah, that's what I'm tracking.
Yeah,
so it should be in the next week or so. I'm hoping next week, but it may be the week after. It's around now. So a couple things to think about for that, especially in the team building topic, is it's going to be cost based. So what that means is every unit, Esper, and Vision card all have a cost associated with them. So like the really premium units like Gilgamesh, Thancred, and Ruinstern, they're all 100, so it's really high. I guess I'll say for context sake, the first class match is 540 total, at least in JP. So the information we're giving right now is based on what we know from JP's version of their first class match. So we're assuming it's gonna be the same, but it could be subject to change. Yeah, it's 540. So for example, 540 is really not that restrictive. My team that I've used for a long time of Victora, Miranda, and Rain, with 3 UR Espers, 3 UR Vision cards, was I think 560. So all I had to do was change to like an MR card, and the team is legal. Have you guys tracked your costs at all and like kind of noticed how you tend to build?
Yeah, it was similar to that.
Yeah, I think the team right now I'm using is 570. I think Victor has 10 points less than the typical UR. Yeah. Okay.
Which is hilarious to me because
didn't we test once and like the only difference like dropping down to 540 was like 1 MR card.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus like the 3 URs that we normally would be at, like 2 UR and an MR card.
Yeah, so like instead of Death Machine, I put on like Iron Giant for slash resist instead, and still had my Bruiser comp. So yeah, 540 is not too restrictive. In the future, they'll drop down to like 500. I know it was one of the recent ones. So MR units start to see play, especially quicken sources like Shell we talked about last podcast. That's kind of where Shell's value comes in, is low cost, high effectiveness. So yeah, I hope everybody's at least excited to try it, even if you're not huge into PvP. I'm hoping it kind of brings an influx of players and interest that maybe like they've kind of built up, right? Like they had live PvP, everyone liked it, loved it or hated it. Then now they have the 2 times and the auto, so a couple more people are dipping their toes in, and now there's going to be a reward system for it based on like how well you play. So maybe it'll get more people into it. I'm pretty excited. What do you guys think of how are you feeling about that, Daniel?
Yeah, definitely sharing that excitement, especially in terms of kind of the live PvP community. Getting more people engaged in the content. Maybe we'll see more competitors signing up for tournaments. Yeah, just really excited to actually be able to show more live PvP, especially while streaming, instead of.
And it's content as well that's more not accessible, but like relatable. So if people are doing this daily content now, they might be looking for more content. So if we can like provide videos, or like anyone who provides PvP videos, I'm sure all 3 of us are going to, it'll be cool to have that extra pool of people watching. Locke, what about you? How are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it'll be good for the game. I think it'll I mean, a lot of the complaints I hear is that there's no good ranking, right? Like right now we are matched by the player rank, which is not a good system. So I think having some kind of tiered rank.
Oh no.
Having some kind of good tiered rank, whatever. I think it'll be good for the game. I think it'll make more people interested in at least trying it out. So I think it's good. I'm looking forward to it. See how high I can rise. Or not, right? But we'll see.
All right, number 1, 2, and 3 are us. Let's do it. Yeah, no, something. While I don't know, I'm not as familiar with the earlier class battles, but one of the recent ones, the reward system was something insane. Like the top competitors were getting like 15,000 PvP medals, which, if you've ever looked at your rewards after PvP match, it's 10 for a victory, 10 for a win, and then it's like you get additional 10s here and there for your streak bonuses up to like certain amounts. Thousands is a lot. That's a couple of Hermes sandals that seemed very out of reach for some people, especially to get plus versions. There's quite the incentive, and I think there's other rewards too, like rainbow vision, or not vision spheres, the yarn ball things. I can't think of the name right now. And what's that?
Azure spheres, rainbow spheres, that kind of thing.
Are they spheres?
Vision.
Yeah, what?
Vision spheres.
That word. All right. But anyway, there's rewards for everybody. It's not just PvP medals, but I think that having Hermes sandals would be interesting for people because it opens up a lot of builds where you feel kind of forced to use an agility TMR sometimes because you're like, I want to be as fast as possible. But if you can do Hermes sandals, you can start to use the really cool armor TMRs that you might not have used otherwise. So I'm a big fan of like Branda's jacket, for example, with Hermes sandals on some of my mages. Anyway, not to get too deep into that. We'll give a lot more info in the future when we have kind of confirmed data in terms of we're assuming it's going to be the same map, which was the old guild battle map that had kind of a 2 height square in the middle with like a hole in the middle or something like that, and like 4 giant pillars. It was during the like high prime of the gunner meta. If we get that same map, I mean, hey,
you can find them. You can find the map right now in the trials, the hard battle number 2.
Oh yeah, yep, good point. Because you start in that square and then you have to like spread out and kill all the guys on the sides. Yep. So yeah, we'll give more information when we have it. And then we'll also probably dedicate an entire podcast to kind of planning for it and thinking about it. And we'll bring someone on we know from JP to talk about their experiences with it. So look forward to that. But getting into today's topic, team building, and kind of starting hopefully from the ground up. That's kind of the theme of a lot of these earlier episodes is we're going to try to build a nice foundation for everybody. And then in the future, we can go into like super deep specific topics. So let's start with common team compositions. So I'm going to list a couple because this is kind of not the interesting part. Dodge teams, Blitz and or bomb comps, depending on how you want to name it. It's like, namely Medina, Cosmo Pluming on turn 1. There's balanced compositions, which is a vague term, but we'll get into that. Bruiser comps, similar to balanced, but I think a little different. Turtle comps, people we'll talk about what it is. Do you guys have any other terms or common themes you could think of for teams?
Gunners.
And Daniel, any you can think of?
I think only specifically those revolving around Aziz's bells, but those are kind of related to what's that?
Every team.
Yeah, so that's kind of related to like the Blitz teams, though. Like you start off with that AP restore and just go to town, right?
So why do each of these exist? So this is kind of talking about why do people gravitate towards certain compositions. So dodge, I think, is both a very specific choice and also a byproduct at the same time. So earlier in the game, the dodge meta existed. So when people have these already developed cards and units, they're more likely to use them elsewhere, right? So I think that's why we might see it a lot. But at the same time, it's very strong. If people aren't packing things like Excalibur, Blades of Grass, focusing on, maybe they have, I guess nowadays you can use Two-Headed Dragon for accuracy. Dodge can just beat you because you aren't prepared for it. You can't hit your opponent. You can't win if you can't hit him. So Venera also is just... Venera was kind of a tipping point for me because Ketone and Shadowlinks were very evadey for a long time, and that was the evade comp. But their damage output wasn't the best, and sometimes they had trouble closing games. But I think with Venera now, those dodge comps, that maybe they had Venera or Ketone and Shadowlinks already, and now they have Venera as the third unit, and now they can actually kill people, and like they can defense down so the other two can do more damage. Do you guys have any thoughts about why you think dodge is more effective now, or why just in general?
I think I maybe had a little bit more experience with dodge earlier on. I think we can all agree that like the kind of teams you can field just have an element in just like RNG, like what vision cards you have built, what espers, that kind of thing. I ran a dodge team for a long time, even in guild wars and guild battles, and I remember struggling with keeping Ketone alive because of her the way ninjas have Utsusemi for just one turn, getting Shadow Links in there and getting that Samurai, like the illusion buff, was really integral to keeping her alive. But Katone herself on Soldier sub job, she could actually do like a lot of damage. She could dish out a lot of damage. So
that's right. She has Drain Force that goes through like most resistances and defenses and stuff.
She still remains like one of the most like diverse units. So like shout out to those like kind of like main Katone users. I know they're out there, and then I think you guys might be watching. So like kudos to you guys. But yes, her damage output definitely isn't to be underestimated.
Yeah, I think the reason Katone is so good is, I mean, not only her damage, but she's also, you can't really one-shot her if you build her as a Drain Force user, because her HP will be high, right? Mm-hmm. So Venera, like one holy will take care of her, but I don't think you can defeat her with just one holy for Katone. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have Katone, I don't play with her.
You'd have to have a very tunnel visioned, like magic attack damage, like a Max Trousseau style team where you're just, and like Ramu and like hardcore damage to be able to one-shot Katone, because I definitely hit her with a holy from like well, I guess Solir gets elemental disadvantage, but from like Ayaka before and she didn't die, so
okay. And I also played a dodge team as well. I started with a gunner team, a double gunner team, and then I switched over to dodge when I got Venera. So my team was Venera, Victoria, and Miranda. And it was a lot of fun to play. I had the most fun in like any game I ever played was like a dodge team against another dodge team where neither of us had a guaranteed hit unit. Those are the best games. And I don't actually mean that sarcastically. I mean, the reason why it was so much fun was because I had to like pay attention to like affinity bonuses to keep my units in range to have a better chance of hitting someone, right? Mm-hmm. Then I had to like plan for I don't know. It was just a lot of fun. Like, I mean, obviously, like straight on, you will have like very low chance of hitting, but then you have to pay attention. Okay, can I I'll not do an action here so that I can go behind them and have like 20%, 30% more chance to hit. So on and so on. It was actually a game of like positioning. That's why I liked it.
That's interesting.
Not just the gambling chance.
Yeah, I've never thought of it like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think nowadays though, like I think I'm more surprised to see evasion teams. So like when people do field them, I think it's more of a surprise, just because of how much accuracy or guaranteed hits are easier to build nowadays.
Yep.
So I think
that Blades of Grass was a big kind of dagger to the heart for a lot of evade comps.
And just like the more raids that come out, the more chances you have of building that Alexandrite ring.
That too, yeah.
So like I think like the dodge meta I think kind of started to fall off towards like the latter half of the summer or the latter end of it. That's kind of redundant, but so people expected to see dodge less and less. So when they run into it nowadays, maybe they're not as prepared for it, especially if you can shut down maybe the one guaranteed hit user, like maybe Killfay will get stopped, or like you get a double sharp shoot off on maybe like another holy user or something,
or an Ayaka or something. Yeah. I think another kind of along that vein too, though, with accessibility of accuracy is something I saw in Guild Wars for some of the higher level guilds. They're actually using the Lasalia sword on wall, like non-ice units, because it's some slash bonus and it's like only 4 accuracy less than Excalibur, which in the past a lot of people use Excalibur just for the accuracy, even if it was on like a Sid where you're like, oh, I want my Nagrok to do more damage. It's just like, if you can't hit, there's no point in doing more damage. So now that you have Excalibur from people who started, in the early days, and Lasalia sword and Blades of Grass, like this, it's all stacking up to really hurt evade teams. But let's be honest, it's not necessarily a guaranteed hit. You're not at 100, but you're not at 0, like you might have been before. Like maybe now it's like a more middling evasion around like 40 to 70% or something.
But I don't know. I mean, like in arenas and guild wars, I can see that these accuracy cards hurting. But for example, like I'll ask you guys this question. Say you test out a move and you see you have a 50% chance to hit. Do you take it? I mean, eventually, yes, you'll have to take it, but
Depends.
you can see that if you move to the side, you might be able to get a better a better chance, right? Or if you get your moves, you have affinity bonuses, you have a better chance of hitting that person. So at 50% chance, I usually don't like to take it. If it's usually less than 70, I don't like to take it because I'll probably get killed the next turn. A lot of these dodge units, especially like Orlando, will one shot most of the stuff I run. So I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, I can see that it's not, it's not 0, it's not 100.
Right. It's still effective. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, I was trying to be like fair to it. Like, it's still effective. It's just not always 0, like it might have been before if you weren't fielding your Excalibur and such. But on your vein of like, do you do it? A lot of time for me, it's like, if it one shots them, like if it's going to one shot them and it's like a 63%, I'm like, the game could just be over. So I'm gonna flip that. Well, that's a little more than a coin flip, but if it leaves them on like 100 health, I'm like, all right, well maybe now I'm gonna try to put myself in a better position, try to find a buff or do something else to increase my chances later. Unless I see like in a turn order that like next turn that dude's killing my healer or something. Like there's nothing I can do about it. Got to gamble.
Yeah, then you have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so. Next one we mentioned were like Blitz and bomb comps. We talked about it briefly last cast. Actually, not briefly because it was double quicken. That was like the whole thing. So there's some like double quicken on like Ramza to do Ultima Bomb turn 1. There's Medina that just has over 100 whatever accuracy and she's not getting outsped by anybody besides like Frederica and Catone maybe. If they're also built for high agility. And then their goal is to just blow you up on turn 1 or 2, or at least remove 1, if not 2, if not your whole team on turn 1, based on your positioning. But the goal is to put you at a heavy disadvantage turn 1 to then grind you out the rest of the game. Any thoughts on those teams?
So I'd never. Sorry, go ahead.
So directed. Sorry.
I think there's definitely like a curve. I don't know. I wouldn't say it really. It's a bell curve, but it definitely depends on what bracket you're in and the kind of units you have access to. Because like maybe, especially since Mediana was given out like to everyone, maybe that's your best gambit, right? So like maybe people like they don't really have a choice but to go for that, and like they win or lose based on that. Right. I mean, it'll take less time in the end, I guess. It's
a glass cannon build. Yeah, it's very high risk, very high reward. Like if you can't get that first turn kill, your Medina's probably built with a card like Cactor, which isn't the greatest. She's probably got Shikuchi and Shadow Runner, so like you need to have your damage elsewhere. Like your other characters have to hold the cards like Trousseau and Ramu to make your Medina powerful, which may or may not hurt those units depending on who you're using. So it's definitely I guess they would also have Scion probably, but it's definitely a gamble. Locke, what were you gonna say?
I mean, I faced and I used it a lot as well when I was in like very low rank, because it was just the most efficient. Like turn 1, I usually kill 2, right, with the Mediana bomb, and then I mean as I went up, I think as I went up to rank 61 plus, like it hardly did. It did a lot of damage, but it never killed anyone. And then she just died, so it was just not effective. So I stopped using that. But I think other like different variations of that make sense to use now. Like we mentioned the Ramza Ultima Bomb with double quicken. That's pretty effective. And also goes through dodge teams as well because it has 100% hit rate.
Right, yeah.
And then I ran a variation of it before with Victora's Dragon Dive. So I would use Steal Time on Victora. I think I mentioned it before. Steal Time on Victora, then Quicken to get a double turn and use a Dragon Dive, and hopefully my opponents are just like together to buff up or something because they don't realize, and then I just like win and turn 1. Right?
Or even double quicken after, like say Victora, because when you set up a double quicken, you have a turn that you can actually choose to buff, right? So you can move up and bells or something, get another turn, move up, and you can actually do her LB too. I think is a big one for Victora. If they position to where you can hit at least 2 of them, that's also extremely effective, and you don't have to worry about Dragon Dive like missing if someone moves or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was I mean, I think those variations are still effective. Again, as Danny said, it probably depends on the bracket you're in and the units that you have access to.
And then there's a version of the bomb where you just walk up and steal time your opponents, and then Ildira LB them, and then if you're locked, that is like in all seriousness, that is kind of like a bomb comp, right? Like you're aiming to turn 1 to just end the game. So. Yeah, I've been trying to do that to people actually. I don't have Venera though, so I've been using Seymour.
Okay.
and it's I have not gotten anybody start across from yet. It's been very disappointing. I still like win the games, but I have to actually like play with Seymour.
I like. I want to mention. I can't remember who kind of coined it for me, but there's another kind of bomb comp where you take a really magic resistant tank, and your own team targets that unit,
Oh, yeah.
and they run forward into the enemy team, and before the spell goes off, and if everything goes right, then you blow up that team, and your tank is just like, what's up?
Yeah, right. I can see doing that with like Miranda, Rain, and then who would be like the biggest damage lock on? I guess you could technically do like a Blizzaga on like Rain, so he's resistant to it anyway because of ice. Like Medina puts Blizzaga and then gets quickened by Miranda and just runs in. And he can cast on himself actually, so you could have two things going, right? Because Medina can target him and he can target himself with Firaga and just run in.
Or start with an Imperil and then like a Thundaga or something.
Someone used this strategy on me on one of the tournaments where he ran a Miranda with a Paladin subjob. So he used Sentinel, and obviously I ignore him, and that's what he wanted. And so he ran up to me and used his LB to confuse everyone.
Was it Zoldix? Was it Zoldix?
No, it was Mako.
Oh, okay. I was saying, because Zoldix, he was the one that did the run-up Sentinel. I ignored him. And
Exactly.
then, he ran up again, Swift Transposition, Ildira item, swapped my unit back in, and then LB'd my whole team. It was pretty sweet. But anyway, so yeah, Blitz and Bomb Comps, very high risk, very high reward. Can potentially end the game on turn 1, literally, or sometimes cripples you enough that it's basically over. I'm going to skip over balance for a second. Bruiser comps, I would define these as a version of, actually I guess we'll talk about balance. So balanced I think of as more of like you have kind of the RPG roles, right? You have like a tank unit, a high DPS unit, like a support unit, or there's no like centralized one thing you're building based off of. It's just kind of 3 units that work well together. They can answer a bunch of different problems, but they're not the best at anything, and they have options. Would you guys agree with that definition? Like Locke, would you?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You want to have a general support unit, you want to have a DPS, you want to have like as many roles as you can fill basically is what you're going for with like, that kind of comp.
One today, right? I could see being like a Sid, Ayaka, and then like Orlando, Jesus, that's Sid. Orlando, Ayaka, and Wall, or Agrius, or used to be Engelbert, but not so much now. Something like that is kind of like the balanced team. You have a little bit of everything.
Yeah, exactly. You have a tank, you have a healer, support, you have good DPS. That's
thoughts about that, Daniel?
Yeah, I tend to like those teams. I like balanced compositions, so that you can kind of adapt to situations better. Like overall, I think they tend to struggle against more specific comps, though.
Yeah,
and so maybe in today's meta, maybe we see that kind of less often because we're seeing very specific comps.
Yeah, so, and then as I kind of started talking about, I think the Bruiser teams, as we kind of call them, are a version of balanced teams, except every unit has kind of the every tool package. So units like Miranda can be built kind of bruisery. Rain is a big one, right? Because you can build him to do damage like I do, but he still is just so innately tanky just because of his stats. Agrius, you can build her more offensively, but she also still just has crazy high defenses and resistances and stuff built in. That you may not blow somebody up in one hit, but they can never one hit you, almost never. And you're going to be able to grind them out. Maybe you have some small heals here and there, and it's more of like a war of attrition that like you're going to eventually win because you're this hard to kill thing that can actually have damage output as well. Those are my favorite teams. Like Miranda, Agrius, Rain, or Miranda, Victora is kind of bruisery the way I build her. In Rain, Miranda and Rain are like my 2 core ones. But what teams do you think of when you think bruisers, Daniel?
Oh man, I couldn't wait to get to this part because
you say Ziza?
I'm still using.
You say anti-holy Ziza.
Yeah, I would love to, but I'm still using the team that I won the Diablos Cup with.
Okay,
Grace.
so
Grace.
Grace and Rain.
Yes, yeah, and I've been just using that for like as much as it's worth, until like we see the Fenrir vision card and Esper more often, just because like magic attack teams are, in my opinion, one of the hardest to defend against and to counter. Especially with bruisers like Kilfey and Rain, and even Grace. Can you imagine calling Grace a bruiser?
I was just
Yeah,
about to say that actually.
Yeah.
I think Grace is one of those bruisers, you know.
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Like, but like I've been finding a lot of success in just like riding that wave, you know.
Well, Grace can be built now, especially because you have a Max Solidus card, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually build her to have basically 100% slash resist, and then if you have Kilfey on the team on Spellblade, which I'm assuming you play her on White Mage, but you could play her on Spellblade and do magic resist, and now she's immune to 2 damage types.
Yeah, yeah. It's been fun.
Insane.
It's been fun playing around with that. She's only been able to reach 95% slash res. Once I get like an armor with slash resistance, then I'll be able to max her out.
Okay, Locke, any thoughts? I'm gonna think for a second about something else.
Yeah, I think it's very fun to play. I've also been trying to play that a bit with Tancred, Ildira, and Kilfey. Now Ildira is the oddball there. She's not a bruiser at all, but she provides the magic resist, which both Kilfey and Tancred is using. So Tancred, has this shield, 50% shield. He has a lot of like HP up buffs. HP up passives. He has like every single kind of resist passive except for I think strike or something in his passives. Like you can have like 15% missile resist, 15% magic resist, all in his passives. So you can build them according to the meta. You can build them to kind of what you want. Right. And Kilfey also has her melee shield, physical shield. So all she needed, she was weak to magic damage. So having Ildira give that magic resist gave her something like I think 70% magic resist overall. So she, it's like another Bruiser comp. So that was fun to run as well, and it's been having a lot of success. It's funny because I don't see anyone else using Tancred. Also, I mean, not so many people have access to him, and some people see him and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna go on auto because this is gonna be such an easy match. Yeah, and also my Tancred is only 89 as well, and they're like, oh, maybe he's just testing something, or maybe he's a noob. I don't know, but.
So Daniel, I was just doing some math real quick. To your point, you can hit 100% on Grace. You had to put Snow White on her.
Yeah, that's the figure that I was running with. I had Siren with the 25%. I had the Snow White on her, and then I was running Solidus on somebody else.
Yep. Oh, you don't have Whisper TMR. That's what it was.
I don't.
Oh, okay. That's what. Okay. Yep. I'm like sitting here. I'm like, it equals 100. But yeah, I forgot you actually have to have the TMR. Yeah. So the funny thing too is you just mentioned using Ildira on a bruiser team, and it's like she's not a bruiser. Mm-hmm. Like I said about bruisers, though, they have some damage up, but they're just not like hyper carries. But if they could take 2 turns in a row, that's probably going to add up to about what a hyper carry is going to do to you in 1 turn. So you get that beefiness, and then Ildira allows them to still have that constant damage output and be able to actually end people's lives before they get to kill Ildira on the team. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, yeah. So you can do it that way too, with like maybe 2 frontliners and like 1 person supporting like that. Yeah.
And I do build Ildira kind of tanky as well. So she does have like Golem Esper, and she has like Platinum Robe, and she can't be one shot by any sharpshooter anymore. She can be one shot by some Orlandos.
Anyway, you mean, right? Like they can't run up turn 1 and kill her, is what you mean? Yes.
No, but even with buffs, I've never seen a sharp shot shooter. Yeah. Nice. Even with buffs, she survived like a sharpshooter from Frederica.
That's impressive.
So it's, yeah, I mean, that's the way I built her. Golem gives her like so many resists to it, right? Because Frederica can't pierce defense. So that's 15% defense, 10% Earth resist? Sorry, Thunder resist. Mm-hmm. So that's a. What were you saying, Daniel?
I was just going to mention that, like, I think that's part of what makes this aspect of the game so vibrant, and why I'm still encouraging people like on the fence, or maybe like haven't really considered getting into live PvP that much, is like these compositions, they aren't like set in stone. They're not definitive. There's the lines are blurred, and there's like a little bit of ambiguity there. Like especially like like Prodijee's example with using Eldira and maybe quickening her and like kind of like fulfilling the role that like another comp would use, but instead using her instead to get that damage in, you know.
Yeah, because she can do. Yeah, actually, if you pair her with a quicken user, she can also be that source of damage too. Like if you have Miranda being a bruiser with Rain and Ildira, I could see that being a pretty solid team. I mean, obviously you have double water, so think of that what you will. But having just Miranda move up and quicken on Ildira CT ups everybody. Maybe Miranda can reposition for later, but not start casting again, so the quicken goes off later. Then yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. And then maybe Ildira gets 2 turns and double holies a team, or just double level 3 water gut hits all of them because his brain just stupid. But, yeah, that I completely agree that I think vibrant was an excellent word. It's just there's so much richness to it and it makes me happy. No. So also thinking about I guess we were gonna separate this into like a separate topic, but I think we should just go into it now. Is like, how would you go about combating a bruiser comp? Like, that's something I still struggle with a little bit, because it's kind of like I just have to outplay them with whatever I have. There's not really, I don't think, a direct counter to a bruiser comp. Can you guys think of one that there is, like, that does exist?
So the reason I actually play this team, Tancred, Ildira, Kilfei, is because I like doing big damage, and there's so many like bruiser comps that I run into, especially Agrius, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just like playing a more offensive like team that does like a lot of damage, and I've been having a lot of trouble with that because Agrius can take so much damage. It takes a lot to bring her down, and a lot of people are building up with a lot of defense and spirit resist and other resistance and so on, right? So the reason I play this team is actually because Tancred. All 3 of my units have light damage. So I chain light damage, and on top of that, Tancred has resistance break, which gives minus, 38% spirit. It's called spirit, right? Yes, spirit. Yeah. minus 38 spirit. So you go up, and Tancred again is very tanky. You can't one-shot him with anything. So you go up, You go up, you slowly walk over, and you use Spirit Break on anyone, including Agrius.
You lumber towards them.
One holy will just take it out. Usually, it does so much damage, and that's one of my answers. Now I have a second answer now, but that was the reason why I came up with that team, is because I'm like, how do I fight these bruiser comps? And that was a struggle for me, especially in the last tournament, because that's what I lost to, because all my losses were against bruiser comps, because I couldn't figure out how to beat it. So that's how I came up with this team. So basically, what my answer for that is like chaining, and the second one was debuffs, like defense debuff, defense break, spirit break in my case. And because I have one move that does both, that's a great team. And it has everything. It has a tank, it has like DPS, it has the quickener, and all of them do light damage, but they also do other damage. I have earth damage, I have water damage. I have slash damage. I have everything, right?
And there's something to be said too for resistance break specifically from Tancred, is that he's actually an attack-based character, like not a magic-based character. And resistance break does physical pierce damage. Yeah. So like pierce is also just innately hard to build against right now with the stuff we have available. So there's actually just even more value in that, I think, which is really cool.
So yeah, that was my first comp that I came up to. I'll talk about my second comp maybe later, but maybe someone else wants to tackle that question as well.
Yeah, Daniel.
Yeah, so I definitely I would like to kind of reiterate what Locke was talking about with the status, like not just the debuffs but the status effects. Yeah, so my approach, my strategy against bruiser teams is you generally want to eliminate the healers and the rezzers first. Because generally most or all of the units can take more than one hit, you have to be more specific. You have to target one unit in particular and make sure they get taken out. And so you want to prioritize which unit that is depending on the different team compositions and like which one maybe will be easier to take out or what'll give you more of an advantage, But generally, like, so how I would combat my own team, like I was referring to, like my full Magic team is.
So that was Grace, Kilfei, and Rain, right?
Yeah, so they, like, it'd be weird if they didn't have max faith, right? So they're really vulnerable to status effects, and so they're getting stopped more often. They're getting confused, disabled, silenced. Exactly. Yeah. So you can't underestimate the power of status effects and these status conditions.
Has anyone silenced your Grace, and you're like, all right, mana strike.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But yeah, it's definitely
trap card. Anyway.
Definitely a huge blow when you can't get the res off when you need it to.
Yeah, revives on bruisery tanky units is so demoralizing. You've worked for like 3 turns to whittle that Rain down, and you're just like, whoop, back full health. It's like, come on. Especially in guild battles, it sucks when like a wall gets revived, because he comes back with all that hate. It's like, god damn it. Yeah, that's a good point. Is a lot of people, especially like the tournament scene, but this also transfers to live PvP, is they bring Ayaka with like the kind of bruisery people because they just want to keep them topped off. Like, you can't do a lot of damage to them, so they're not going to die, and then they just get healed back up because the healing scaling off of like high faith is just ridiculous. So, and a lot of the bruisers, if you think about it, even some tanks have self-healing. So Agris has regen, and then she's going to have high faith, so she gets healed by other people. Rain has Cura. Miranda has Cura. This is assuming you're on Red Mage, right? But Wall has a self heal if you're ever using Wall. He has some use. He's a little slow, but he's got stop. You can do like pierce damage with him if you want to have him on Dragoon. He's got some tools that are pretty cool. Engelbert, like I said, not so much anymore. Does Thancred have Cura on his Red Mage sub? Not that it's gonna do a lot, but it's at least a little bit.
He does, yeah. And he has Asuna as well, which is very useful against these status effects.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mashari might be seeing some debut soon in live PvP. So a lot of us are getting her up to 99 for the TMR, but at the same time, she has a lot of Asuna type effects, and I think on her main job in Cleric, Erase getting rid of positive or negative benefits? I forget about that one.
Negative.
Okay, so I think she has, it's like Erase Calamity. She has like some resistance, like anti status stuff. It's really cool, and she has pretty high stats. Don't sleep on her. So yeah, having all those little bits of healing in addition to even an Ayaka makes it just so annoying to play against. And like you're saying, Kilfei too, also. That's the other one I forgot. Anyway, we'll move on for Bruisers for now. We might come back to them later. But then there's like Turtle Comps, which I don't think we see as much anymore, right? They've kind of transitioned into Bruiser. Like, people who used to play Turtle Comps just play like actual Bruisers now. Like, instead of just sitting in the back and Ayaka spamming with it. Like, what was it before? It'd be like a gunner, like Frederica would hit you turn 1 and run back. And then your other person would run back, Ayaka would run back, and then just heal if they could even ever hit you anyway. I think this is more of like an option to teams rather than it is a team comp now. Would you guys agree? Like, some people will do it with a team where they move back after hitting you or something. Like, they want, like, turtling is a way of life, not a way of team building. Is that kind of a fair statement?
I think so. Yeah. Especially with a lot of people using Quicken, which kind of breaks the turtling meta anyway, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was going to be my point too. I'm glad you said that. I forgot. It was going to be the rise of Quicken and people being aware of how to break turtle comps. I think just kind of got rid of them from the meta, and that's why we see Bruisers now. Are there any other main archetypes you guys can think of that you would say exist? Like, you could say a magic damage team, but that's not really a composition. That's just like a type of damage, I think. It's not that simple. I guess you could talk about gunners. So Locke, you mentioned gunners being kind of like a special type of composition. So what do you define that as besides, being
so
gunners?
the reason I say that is actually because I'm also using gunners to break up these bruiser comps, and it's working really well as well. So right now I switched back to double gunner with Ildira, and the reason for that is because of the quad shot from Lucia. So I'm up against a Agrius. I use quad shot. It does like 100, 200, and then like 300 damage or something, like 1,000 damage, right? And then I use sharp shot and Frederica, one shot. So it's because of those chains that build up. So I have, the double gunner comp, in my opinion, is like it's just capable of dealing with so many different types of opponents. Like you can deal with evade comps very easily because you have sharpshoot. You can deal with these with these bruiser type comps because of quad shot. You have that innate 15% reflex, which is going to win you some games. So it's just like they just have like they have tools for a lot of things, which is why I think which is why I think it was very popular until we started getting some more interesting units. A lot of the comps that I faced were double gunner comps. Now it's much less common, and also we haven't had a gunner being released since Lucia. So.
Stadio?
Oh yeah, we do have Mustadio. Well, we haven't. Most people did not focus on him because of the other units that he was released with, right?
I was going to ask about Mustadio. I know you were a fan of Mustadio. You've talked about him a lot in PvP and how like his status effects are just egregious, like the chances on him. So, have you tried Mustadio in that similar team, like with Frederica or with Lucia?
I did. I ran a triple gunner team, and the way I did it was. And the way I did it was that I had Frederica turn 1 buff both Mustadio and Lucia with her aim buff. And from where he's standing, if the opponent is using initial positioning, Mustadio can use one of his, I think it's disable or is immobilize, to try to land a hit. And if he misses the hit, then Lucia will come and sharpshoot and kill that unit anyway. So I have a backup plan, and so. That comp is pretty powerful. I just got bored of it. Just so I stopped. But,
it's not interesting, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know. I like to switch my comps around all the time. But I found that, depending on what your goal is, like, for example, if your goal is to try to get as many win streaks as possible in live PvP, maybe Mustadio is not the unit that you should be going for. Maybe, I don't know. This is my opinion, because Mustadio, the main thing you're going for is those status effects, right? And you will get them a lot of times because he has a higher probability. But there's going to be one game where you're going to miss like 3 or 4 status effects in a row, and it's just going to ruin the game, right? Because that's kind of what his main thing is. Mm-hmm. I think he's better for tournament play. Because when you have him, your opponent is forced to think about it. Like they have to be forced. Okay, they have to either bring a TMR against it, or they have to build against it, or they have to position against it. And it's just like his presence on the team is like something you have to deal with.
It's more of an intrinsic value of his existence versus like actually what he's doing on the field. Yeah,
exactly. That's what I think. I mean, obviously, status effects are going to be very impactful. But for live PvP, I mean, again, he is a good unit. It is the status effects are very, very good. But it's just those, like, if you're trying to build that win streak, maybe not. So it depends on what you want, right? I know some people really want that win streak, so I don't know. In that case, I would say
right. Just try harder.
Yeah, go for it.
Can you imagine doing that to somebody? Just turn 1, you walk up, 13%, just poof, turns to stone. Just like, God damn it.
So all the Mustadios I've faced in live PvP, that's what they did turn 1 to me. The reason is because I use Frederica's they don't actually petrify me, but they try. The reason is because I use Frederica's TMR. So all the status effects are nullified. Like he doesn't have anything anymore. He doesn't have immobilize. He doesn't have disable.
It's literally all 3 of his main ones, right? The blind, immobilize, and disable. Mm-hmm. So Frederica's TMR is just like, all right, there you go. Steve Mustadio.
Exactly. So they're like, well, I guess I'll try the petrify, but I had an Asuna as well, just for that.
Sure. Yeah.
It's it nullifies stop, not blind, but yeah, close enough, right?
Oh, is it stop? Oh, I mean that's probably better. Like, so you have game against Agrius and wall and stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nullify stop. Yeah, that's right. So that's actually been one of my so my Bruiser comp, I always use Frederica's TMR because I'm like, there's gonna be this one match where I'm gonna face an Agrius and she's just gonna stop me or immobilize or whatever. So I'm gonna bring that Frederica's TMR. And that's 2 casts as well. So I have 2 units for 3 turns. Yeah, it does. You can use it twice in one match.
So I'm like 35 shards from ML being Frederica, I think, from doing like the friend medals, but she's not awakened yet.
I was gonna say it must be nice to have Frederica.
So I'm like, I might have to awaken her just to get the TMR. I knew it was good and I wanted it anyway, but I didn't realize I had 2 uses. That's huge.
Yeah.
And so that's actually really cool if like your other unit has Asuna, and then so one unit has Asuna, one has Frederica's TMR. They can kind of help keep each other healthy while also supporting the third unit. It's pretty sick.
So what I do is I always have Ayaka's TMR and I have Frederica's TMR with these status effects going on, because the only thing that can get through the Frederica's TMR is usually silence, right? And so I always have Ayaka's TMR on a mage, because if that mage got silenced, she can still use her TMRs, so she can at least purify herself.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's...
Man, I guess that's where my fragments are going. Any thoughts about gunners these days, Daniel? I know you don't really play them, but like against them, have you been experiencing that much at all?
No, I haven't really seen any gunners recently in my matches.
All right, cool. So we kind of started getting into originally when we were planning this, we were talking about splitting up how to combat each comp after talking about the comps. So we kind of just did that for most of them. But I would say maybe we talked about things that stop dodge teams, but maybe let's talk a little more about actually what we do in the match against them. Like, so say you go into a match, you don't have Blades of Grass on, right? And we'll just use an example, Locke, because you play, I think, a lot more than I do in general, just because you're in the bracket of plentiful matches. So Thancred, Ildira, and who's your third unit?
Kilfei.
And Kilfei. Oh, okay, never mind. You have Foley. So
yes, but if the other way, so right now I'm running Ildira on Spellblade because I want to bring up the magic resist. But if I was not playing this team, for example, if instead of Kilfei I used Victora for a while, so I used, I think, like Victora, Venera, and Ildira for a little bit, and I put Ildira on Arithmetician sub because she
disable?
has for disable, yeah. So that's one way of also trying to combat dodge teams, because disable doesn't look at your dodge chance. It's 49% if you have 97 health. Sorry, 97 faith. And once you're disabled, your hit percent is 100%. So that's another way of trying to combat the dodge teams.
Yeah, that's
disable,
what I was going to mention.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how because I play a lot of like red mages that have sleep. So sometimes sleep is a way higher chance than it is to hit them. Or like if I ever play, this is more of a tournament setting, but if I ever play like Phoebe or somebody with actual stop, you can just try to stop them too. And that'll be another way to get that 100% chance to hit after they've been status affected. Agrius, not so much, because you actually, for like units like Agrius, like the ones who are like the blade users who aren't spell blades, but they have status effects and like really long range on their blade attacks, you actually have to hit their attack to get the status effect off. So they're a little less valuable against those evade comps unless you actually have the accuracy. So that's something to consider as well. Daniel, were you about to say something was about sleep or just in general?
Oh yeah, so that just kind of goes back to what I was suggesting against Bruisers, but like, don't sleep on your those status conditions.
Sorry, that got me a little bit. I think that's essentially what it is. Like, either have a guaranteed, like, make sure you have some kind of guaranteed hit on your team, or access to status effects, or lots of accuracy, and you'll be able to handle dodge teams. Like, I've actually been using Blades of Grass on most of my teams. Like, it's been like Scion, Blades of Grass, and then third card depending on the like my other units, just because I want to have kind of that all-encompassing build. I want to go fast, which helps lots of things, not just the taking more turns. Then also, Blades of Grass for the accuracy, and it goes on my Agrius, and she does more damage. She's not evading anyway. And then, like, if I have a magic DPS off Trousseau as my other card or something. Very, like, selfish cards, but they accomplish the goal of being able to handle a little bit of everything. Okay, any last thoughts about team compositions in general? Or
I think one thing you can, when you're trying to build a team, is, as you mentioned, like, we're thinking of all these things as counters, but sometimes you don't want to counter everything. It's okay to have a weakness. And I mean, like, for example, if dodge teams are all you see in the arena, that should not be your weakness, because you're going to lose a lot. But for example, so I built Ildira to withstand Sharpshoot, even a buffed Sharpshoot, right? And I can also stop Armor Crush from Orlando, sometimes, but I could make her even more defensive if I wanted, and make sure that Armor Crush never kills her. But there's no real need. I mean, there's going to be like how many % of chances where Orlando will turn one, come in, Armor Crush my Ildira. right? So like that's like a loss that I'm like, okay, well, that just so happened. I don't want to sacrifice her potential by these 1 out of 100 matches where Orlando will be right across from me and turn one come and do that.
Right.
So
you don't want to hurt your other matchups to the point of making them, like, say you have 80% of your matchups that you can think of are at least advantageous, like even if it's only 55-45, they feel advantageous, but then there's like this one team that you just, or this one unit, like, that you just can't deal with. If, like you said, if it's not what you see every game, don't just accept the fact you have somewhat of a worse matchup, so you can still have those crazy good chances against most teams. I think some people get really caught up in, especially in the tournament scene, about trying to solve every problem with one team. It's just, you're going to find that the team is less successful overall versus if you just accept it, you have better.
We often reference like the rock paper scissors aspect of the game for PvP at least, but sometimes it's just more fun to just be the one who knocks, right?
Yeah, right. So once you actually have a team, you have to play games. But before you play your games, there's this wonderful thing called initial positioning that we've touched on a lot, but we haven't really talked about in too much detail. We're going to just talk about in context of the current live PvP map, and not in terms of like the other like friendly duels ones you can play on, because I think a lot less people do friendlies, even more so than they do live PvP, so, or like match battles. So let's just talk about that one map. But kind of planning your first turns is a big thing too. So let's just kind of go into all of it. I don't think we're gonna have too much structure with this, but well, Locke, we've been talking about your team a lot. The Thancred team here. How do you position initially, and why do you put them where you put them?
So I put them in one of the two corners at the very end, like the L here or the L here.
Okay,
and
the corner?
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason I do that is because I need that magic resist buff. Otherwise, both Thancred and Killfake will take a lot of damage from magic. So the reason I do that is because I want as much chance of surviving a magic attack turn one. I mean, everyone on my team is a bit slow. Thancred especially is very slow. So I need to survive at least until that magic resist buff goes off. So Ilder is always in the center so that she doesn't have to move, but she will buff. And once everyone is buffed, I am pretty confident in moving up, because I don't really fear anyone at this point. I'm like, no one is gonna one shot me. So that's why I position my team that way.
And then Daniel, what teams have you been using recently, and where are you positioned and why?
Recently, like ever since the Diablos Cup, that was it's weird to think of now, like how impactful it was on my recent PvP, but because of running that Bruiser comp, where I can rely on any of my 3 units to kind of make a difference. Before then, I definitely had to be concerned more about my initial positioning and trying to anticipate what my opponent was anticipating and playing that mental like chess match, but now that I have more of a balanced team, so to speak, I kind of just hug the center pillar. I keep, like if you are on the left of it, the front of it, and the right of it, you're still within the max affinity distance, and you aren't as committed to one side or the other, and that's more in line with the balanced strategy of that team that I have.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think just to mention, because I'm going to put pictures in the bottom corner during this cast, we have this lovely guest account that's not actually a real account or anybody talking, so we can put pictures here. There's also the aggressive, the kind of Blitz Start, which is a front Medina with usually a tank or like some kind of support in the middle, and then another one off to the side, just to get like as much affinity as possible. Then lately I've been doing, so like I said, I've been doing teams with like Victora, Miranda, or Ildira, and then other DPS Bruiser, something like Agris, or Seymour if I'm having fun. Actually, I guess that's a different one, so I'll put the formation up on the screen briefly for the Seymour team. But I've been liking the kind of like you said, Locke, in the corner, except shifted, so that I'm on the other side of the pillar, a little more towards the middle. Because if someone's really across the map, my team, I want to be able to access them earlier, not give them like, it's usually the difference between like one extra turn I've found. Like if I'm all the way in the corner and they're all the way in the other corner, I feel like it takes, would you say maybe like if you're walking just towards them, it's like what, 4 turns if they stand still or like kind of stay in that same area to get within at least somewhat engagement range. Versus if I start with like an L in on the inside, I can cut that down by a turn and potentially hit them a lot sooner, especially if I have Quicken or Ildira LB or something. The only issue with, I would say the negative part of doing that is I'm a lot more susceptible to getting plumed. If someone is running one of those Blitz Comps, all 3 of my units are going to get hit, which is not the greatest start. Now, how often do you guys take into account your first turn buffs, and how does that change your initial positioning? So Locke, you said, you already kind of answered this. You said you have it in the L shape in the deep corner because you need to magic resist first.
Yep.
Did you agility tune at all to make sure that your magic resist unit goes first, or do you just does someone go faster and you don't move so that they stay in range, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, so Ildira actually happens to go last. I tried to get everyone as high agility as possible because I don't have anyone hasting in the team, right? So I'm not trying to make them slower. What I do is, Kilfei usually goes first. He's the fastest. So if I feel that she can get killed, someone's going to attack me. What I do is I move 2 across. So Kilfei's here, Ildira's here, Tancred is here. So I move Kilfei over to here so that she's still in that range of Ildira's buff.
Mm-hmm.
And on Tancred's move, I just use his shield, Super Bullet. I think that's what it's called. And I just stand still because once he casts that, I'm pretty confident that it's going to be very hard to one-shot him. So he can stand still. And on Ildira's turn, now I usually have Tancred here and Kilfei here, or if Kilfei didn't move over here. So she will use magic resist and move back because she's not the bruiser on my team. So I need her to be safe and heal and support damage and so on. But that is my turn 1 what I do.
Yeah, in a lot of tournaments when we play on this map, I tend to, before, like you said, the Diablos Cup, which is actually what impacted my little L start on the inside of the pillar. Before that, I always just did the center start so I could adapt to whatever my opponent's doing, and I'll just accept if I get hit turn 1. I play Bruisers anyway. Hopefully I don't die. Typically I wouldn't die to like a Crush Armor or something. But I like to make sure that if I'm using, say, a DPS unit with Purify, for example, like this is getting like really specific into it, is I will make sure they're on the side so that on their first turn they can move up 1 and over 2 to make that little like L shape, purify the whole team, and then like my other unit gets to bells and move up, like if it's Agrius or something, and then my support gets to stay in that second back spot to stay behind the team as well. So like that, and because Victor often goes first, I know that's going to happen first. So like Miranda, Agrius, Victor was the team I was using for a while, and I would do that so that Victor move up, purify, that gives her a lot of AP. Then Agrius can bells move up, Miranda can quicken and move up, haste and move up, whatever. Daniel, how often do you plan your first moves versus just kind of go with the flow?
Well, Prodijee, I'm glad you asked. No, joking aside, this is something that I talk about on my stream a lot when I'm trying to provide a platform for people to kind of understand and learn more about PvP. It's another topic that's like so near and dear to my heart, and it's because I believe that initial positioning and that those crucial first turns are like implicitly and like intimately connected, right? There's such a huge part of like the rest of the match, and like it's like the opening moves in like a chess match or whatever. You have to have a game plan and like develop a strategy for your team, and the initial positioning and that first turn of buffs or blitzing or whatever strategy you're using, they have to go hand in hand because you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage otherwise. Like when and trying to fine-tune that machine, like the phrase we've used before, it's something that you have to keep in mind when going into a match, right? So for me, I think harking back to like way back in like the first month when I was using Ziza, actually probably closer to the second month, I had like that first tournament was like Ziza, Sid, Ayaka, and like I had them in the corner, like either corner, and I had tuned it so that
Weren't they in a line, right? It was
yeah,
like Ziza, Sidaka, yeah.
yeah, so that Ziza could like run up and charm if she needed to, or like steal vision or whatever, and then like Sid could get that illusion buff. Like it's not just about the initial positioning; it's about considering your first turn. Generally, like as a more defensive player, I like to like get those buffs in because I can't stress enough to you guys like how your first turn affects the rest of the match. Not only like on your side, but like watching your opponent's first turn. It reveals so much about their strategy just by being able to see the buffs that they're using. It reveals like if they're not using like a main job skill, like what sub job they are, so what you can expect to kind of encounter later.
Information gathering, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Scouting like what your opponent is doing. If they like go to disengage or retreat from like whatever position you're at, like you can expect kind of like a longer game, and kind of like play off of that. So yeah, I could go on, but
I mean, you can if you want. If you have more to add, I mean, it's all valuable, I think, to hear this, because I think about it pretty deeply, but I don't necessarily have the same kind of passion that I think you do about it. So I mean, I like hearing you talk about it.
Okay.
There's definitely times where I've mentioned where I kind of adapt a lot more. I don't really look at my agility too much. I just I have my build how I like it. I put my units where I want them, and I just go with it. But I think something I can add to the beginning of a match is you were saying information gathering, watching your opponent's first turns. Also, looking at their vision cards and their stats in that time frame also, I think is very important. I think this kind of goes along with the same topic of kind of initial positioning, is you want to take that time in that very first turn to look at their vision cards so it's magnifying glass, click any of their units, map, scroll to them, click on the unit, magnifying glass, and then there's like a little party ability thing. You can see what they are. You can see if they're max VCs or lower VCs. That can tell you a little bit about the player themselves, if they're more of a whale, if they have like a lot of max stuff, or if maybe they have some like off, maybe like a Leona's Castle you see. Means it might be more on a budget. You can look at faith values to see if you think they're going to be valuing status effects and healing over resisting them. Or like if you're relying on a charm, maybe you can see if you're going to have a good charm chance. All of that information can tie in pretty quickly. Also, like other information you can gather, if their bravery is like 85, maybe they don't care so much about PvP, so you kind of like get that feel that they're going to be a little like lower on the rung. Like there's that information that sounds like mean to say, but at the same time that can be helpful to like see. You can get kind of like what kind of player they are. And if they're not as hardcore, they might have, like I said, not maxed out bravery. Or like if they buff and then run towards you, that tells you a lot about how they play too and who they are. So
yeah,
those are things I like to look at.
It kind of goes back to like kind of the fundamentals, maybe of not like competing in general, but like PvP wise. Like if you can anticipate what your opponent's going to do, that's such a huge advantage in your court, you know. So and that's what like these little like things like information gathering. It's the kind of understanding that you can build towards, you know. So going back to the initial positioning and the like the first turn or second turn or so, kind of something that transitions from something we've talked about before, either like not just like the agi and CT involved, but like we mentioned this like in an episode or two since, but like you don't have to both move and take an action each turn. And I think probably no more highlighted is that decision than in the first turn or two, especially considering like the disparities in the speeds of like each team, or like maybe like a faster unit on the opponent's team versus like a slower or faster unit on your team, you know. You can correct for these kind of disparities with your efficient use of CT. And like we mentioned last episode about that use of CT, like if you can just manage to buff and not move from your initial positioning, that initial position is so much more powerful than if you were in a position where you were kind of forced to move and then buff, you know?
Right. I think two things to add to that. One is Ildira specifically kind of is interesting with that too. Like if you stand still and then Ildira takes a turn, chances are if you use her LB, that unit's going to take a turn in like 1 or 2 game cycles, because they kept 20, they're about to gain 60, assuming it's a max LB, and then they only have to build up like what, 20 more, which is 2 to 3 turns depending on the unit.
Yeah, it's
so
such a
2 to 3 ticks, which is fast. I was gonna say, you know, you guys seen those memes where it has like the brain that's getting like bigger and bigger and brighter and like the different levels. I feel like my opponents, if they run towards me attack, that's like the highest level, right? Like they're like the highest rung. Next one down is like they buff and stand still. I'm like, okay. Or sorry, they buff and move. Next one is they buff and stand still. And then the last one is they buff and then they move 1 space. Because that is so deliberate and terrifying. Like they're thinking something. They're either setting up a perfect CT or
Right.
they're spacing perfectly. There's something I don't know what's happening because I can't see it yet. It's like there have been a lot of times where that one movement has been super good. Like if you're I talk about threat range all the time, where like Sid's threat range is 8, right? He can move 3, crush armor 5. Like that's his like max range. Or Ildira I think has like what, 9, because she can move 3 and then it's like a ridiculous
Yep.
like it's very far. Victora has a really weird threat range because of her diagonals on her LB. So like those 1 spaces you move can really make or break how an interaction happens later. So like whenever I see that, I'm like, is that deliberate? Maybe they wasted their turn on accident? Like what is happening? But
yeah, so that kind of reminds me of something else I kind of mentioned on stream a lot is you can kind of track like the ebb and flow of the battle of a match by these kind of what I call swings. Like the Ildira, just part of how powerful her kit is. Like just her LB can be such a huge swing that like whenever you see that happen, you're like, oh shit, I better be ready for what happens. Or if you're the one doing it, you're like, well, I'm using this because I'm about to like knock it out of the park, right? And that's why I kind of call it a swing. Getting like a crucial like status effect off, or like stacking whatever attack chains like slash or missile.
sure.
Like just another part of like just how vibrant this mode is like recognizing those swings, when to take them or when to not take them, and
Or when they're about to be taken upon you.
and anticipating that. Yeah, so it's great.
PvP's good, okay? Any thoughts on all that, Locke?
Yeah, it's I like in some of my videos that I've made on PvP, I've also I think I called it the big turn, or the big like, you know, the turn where you want something to happen.
Sure.
And you're planning for that. Or and now with Ildira, yeah, whenever I use the LB, I'm like, okay, this is the turn I'm going in, because once I use it, that's it, you know. And with Ildira especially, I try to do it so that she is always in range to cast her LB, because if she stands still and casts it, she gets 80 CT, right? Wherever, no matter where, she casts it. So I always try to cast it first, and then I check to see where she is on the, like, when is she going to take a turn? And then I'm like, if I move, will she still take the turn where she's taking it now? And if she can, then I will try to, like, you know, like it becomes it's a game of like trying to manipulate CT, which is what I try to do in most of my games. Yeah, it's like I think that is probably the best thing that I do in most of my games. That's how I try to win, like CT manipulation. And one of the things I've seen with people that don't have Quicken, but they have haste, they have the haste user go last, and the person that goes first, so they'll have like a Mediana, and she can't reach anything, so she won't use a buff, she'll just move up. And then and they have like a Ayaka who will haste to Mediana, and she will usually I don't know, like
she'll skip like one space or something. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it'll skip the turn. Like you expect your unit to go first or something, but because she hasted it, and you know it just moved up a turn order or something, and you get screwed because you aren't anticipating it, right? So even without Quicken, you can still try to pull off all these kinds of moves with just a hasting unit like Ayaka.
That's like an outplay standpoint, right? Like you can outplay your opponent in ways that aren't just having this Quicken Gambit or some gimmick. It's just literally how you play, not like what your units are actually doing.
Yeah,
which I guess is not the clearest way to say it, but it's something you as a player are doing, not unit specific things.
There's something interesting that I want to bring up that's kind of related to that, like adjusting based off like positioning stuff. Something that I see a lot in tournaments is like from people that know what they're doing is like this adjusting with range and like CT involved and stuff like that. For observers, it may not be as exciting because it's like it's a dance, right? But when you are in the cockpit and you're the one making the decisions and facing down your opponents, when you are trying to achieve, like trying to open windows of opportunity to make an attack, and your opponent's doing the same thing, and like each of you know what they're doing, like I can't tell you how many times we've seen turn 50 wins by like being forced to go to that last turn and getting a hit in. It's as frustrating maybe as it may be to watch something like that happen, like wake me up 30 turns later, like the amount of thought like that has to go into that is kind of a thrill, you know, like when it's you that's playing.
Right.
Yeah,
it's definitely different when you're in the match. Like, and to be honest though, being in that situation so often, because I play these really bruisery, slow, sometimes grindy comps, I appreciate it a lot more as a viewer. But I can see, like you were saying, how other people might watch it and be kind of like, oh, this is boring. Like I know the very first tournament, the finals, you versus Snacko, a lot of people didn't enjoy watching it because Snacko was turtle extraordinaire back then, and he would just back up and let you force you to come to him, and then maybe he would like poison or not poison mist, like poison mist Stern back to your face or something later. But there's a lot more to it, and those little micro steps can mean everything. I think to kind of go on that, my Venera Cup match against, I believe it was either Snacko or I think it was Snacko. There was a match where I had a Orlando against his Orlando, and we played this game on the top where it was I moved by one space one turn, and people were like, why did you move? You would have taken a turn sooner. But I had calculated based on he couldn't crush armor me from across because of the distance, and if he moved up, he'd have the wrong height. But then also Hien with a height of 2, that one space kept me out of range of getting Hien because he couldn't walk past my Miranda, but then I could walk down and crush armor him if I needed to based on where he was. And it's like these little micro steps can mean everything. And like to a viewer, it's like, he moved. But to me, it's like, I just did 3 things in one move. Like you have to be in that moment. It's so invigorating.
I think that was one of the times where I was casting like your match, and like I seem to remember like pointing that out just in case people weren't paying attention. And like God, we could talk about this all night. It goes back to like the swings that I was talking about. Like sometimes these swings can be like the subtle nuances that like maybe you're not paying attention to, and then like later you're like, wow, that was it.
It was that moment. So I think to wrap up, let's close off on this question, which I didn't actually pose earlier, but I'm going to pose now. You can't assume everyone has everything, but if you were to assign somebody a team comp to use to learn a lot more about the ins and outs of playing live PvP, what would be a team comp you'd look to make? I'll start with Daniel. Unless, Locke, you have one like right off the bat. So for me, I would say go for a balanced, like kind of like that turtle comp we talked about, but more balanced, where it's like you have a supporty, either time mage, healer, something like that, a DPS unit, and then a bruisery tanky type unit, because you kind of get a little bit of everything. You have to protect one unit, you have a DPS one, you have kind of a balanced one. I like that as kind of like a core way to build your fundamentals, instead of going like, if you just play a dodge comp as your first comp, you might get too reliant on those evade chances, or as a gunner you might get too reliant on being able to like hit people from really far range and never have to even engage. I think forcing yourself to actually engage but also have that protective bit with a support in the back would be a good team to learn on. Do you guys have any input on that, or a team that you would suggest?
Yeah, definitely. I can agree with that. I think that's similar to what I was going to say. But I can also say like what you probably don't want to start with, and it's the
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
these more advanced teams or strategies like the double quicken. Like you don't want to start with that. You want to like get your fundamentals down. Working on the fundamentals. I don't know, maybe
start with forgiving teams. I think that might be a fair overall statement rather than trying to like assign units or something. It's like ones that don't just like Bruiser comps, I would say, actually, but don't just lose to one thing or that have a lot of options. Like don't go into doing the blitzes first or dodges first. You'll get bad ones.
The niche kind of strategies. And I think that's kind of why we've been trying to cover these, like in these initial episodes. Like, we're trying to cover these fundamentals to help encourage people to get into the game. So I like your question. Yeah, I think it's important to consider. Like, you don't want to just dive in with like a dodge team or something, and just like get obliterated and just be like, I quit.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and I also second the sentiment that I highly do not recommend you use the Mediana like blitz team to start, because you might actually win a lot, especially if you're starting out and you're in a low bracket, but you're not really learning much, in my opinion, because you turn one you win, right? And then if the few matches that you lose, you lost because you played a gambit. Right. So I don't think that's such a good team to learn. I think a balanced team or even like a Bruiser comp is probably the best teams to learn. You just because every team you have to kind of think you're not relying on a gimmick or a certain thing, right? Like a lot of the gimmick strategies, if they work, they work. If they don't, they don't. And then you kind of like if they don't work, if you're advanced enough, you're like, okay, well, what else can I do? You can think about it. But if you're starting out, you don't have that, right? So it's better just to start with like a neutral team that has a little bit of everything that you can adapt. That's the best way to learn, right?
Man, it's so weird. Like, I just remembered something Red Knight said. Shout out to Red Knight, by the way. He's one of our active PvPers and on the scene. It was totally something like not even relevant to the game. Like, but he was talking about software engineers and like how he like hires them, and like he doesn't really look for the hotshot ones at the top of their class, from what I remember at least. He looks for the ones that have made mistakes and have learned from them, and it's about the mistakes made and learning from those experiences is what I think kind of got us where we're at right now. Like for us, instead of being afraid to make those mistakes and kind of writing yourself into a corner, so to speak. Like you gotta make those mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with not using those like all in dodge comps or all in on things, because you may not even be making mistakes. You may just not have tools to you might not have actually been able to win that situation no matter what, because you don't have a diverse array of tools. So it's harder to identify what you did wrong. Whereas if you're playing a more balanced team with like a support DPS tank or like a bruisery comp, like we mentioned, where you have the chance to do smaller decisions like a heal here instead of damage or something, because you're not dying in one hit, you get to learn a lot more about the decision making of it that way, I think. Right. I think that's sorry.
I was going to say, like for me personally, the way I learned to manage CT so well was using Murmur very early on, because Murmur has such low agility that I need to be really conscious of what I'm doing every turn, right? So I was not using a cooking unit. I wasn't even using a haste unit. I was just learning to be mindful of conserving CT. And I mean, I don't know if you want to do that now, like, use SRs where the game is so advanced, but that was the strategy back then for me to learn. And that's why I always start with like units that are like 79, 89 and not maxed out, because that way I learn to progress them and get better and better. And then eventually I can play it at a higher level.
Yeah, don't expect to win everything in the beginning. That's a big mindset thing as well.
Don't expect to win everything ever.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think that concludes the episode for this week. If you guys want to leave comments down below on what you like and didn't like, I know we've had some comments here and there, but we'd like to hear from you guys even more. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about in the future. And if you guys actually have a guest you have in mind, whether it's another content creator you like listening to, or somebody you know that does a lot of PvP and you think could add value, we can check them out and talk to them and see if they want to join. But,
or share your experiences too. I want to hear about them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
But we have been Let's Talk Tactics. I was Zach Burrell.
Danylboone.
I'm Locke.
And we will see you next time.